have depleted the tank. I'm going to explain it in a minute. Okay, are we all set there, Bruce?
It's, yeah, 6:56, 6:59. Cool.
I
We
got
have a
7.
full commission. Everybody's here. Cool beans. Even Al on Zoom. That is a great thing. Thank you very much. We got all the audience of citizens. We don't have anybody in the audience of citizens, so we'll dispense with that. Approval of minutes. Everybody read them?
Yep.
Any corrections or omissions or anything? I don't hear anything. So how about a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve minutes.
A first, second. Dick, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary minds nay. Okay.
Before we get started with the new business, I just want to point out one special thing is that this is a special meeting, so I can't add anything else to the agenda. So if there's something that comes up and you think we need to add it, we could do it in December's meeting if we can have it. But because it's a special meeting, we can't really add more than what already is. I get started with the first item, obviously, is the new commissioner, Seb Senya. It's been a long time coming. A neighbor tried to coerce him for many, many years and finally got him here. And it was Lisa actually that got him here, so that was helpful.
What was the booing about?
Well, I don't know who was booing. His best friend was booing. I think
Because he used to be like golf player.
Okay. Not happy in golf apparently, but we'll let it go at that. So welcome aboard.
You sure you two want to sit across from each other?
Yeah.
Better than next.
So
I don't know how long their leg is, but
yeah. So welcome aboard, and we'll see what happens. Okay, the first item, as you should know, and everybody who's in town very familiar with, is the Hawthorne Fire. Actually, Sebi and his son Gregory took this photo. It was the first night of it, and that was kind of an interesting thing. I'd gone up there that night, and I want to explain a couple of items too at this point in time with regards to this, because I don't know if you want to pass it down. It was a nice photo. The fire basically continued for several weeks beyond that date. It started actually October 21st at some time. And FEMA and a lot of individual companies, New York City, Quebec, even California people came in and did some firefighting there. Of course, we had some serious issues. It was about that first night, 350 feet was measured by a drone from our tank. Now, my fear was not so much the tank burning or anything like that. My fear was that the amount of water that needed to be consumed there would be substantial and could create a problem. And here's the relationship. Sage Ridge goes along the section and goes up all the way up to the point. And at that elevation is almost at the elevation as our storage tank. Good distance away, but at almost the same elevation. Sage Ridge has booster pumps. We found out when we were painting the tank back in 2014, we can only draft the tank at a certain level. And what happens is those booster pumps cut off, which means it cuts off all the fire protection for those people up at the upper levels. That was my biggest concern, is because that could have been very critical. There wouldn't have been any water. The only water that would have been in the tank is in the tank. And we had to put our wells, and we'll talk about FEMA, but we put our wells on 24-hour pumping. That's the maximum we could do. So we left them on 24 hours, and we saw that the tank was still balanced, so we were happy with that. Apparently what happened is that some of the firefighters were able to come in from the Meriden side on Canyon Avenue, apparently, fight it from there, and then, of course, fought it from the northern section. This evening, during the fire was coming, the wind direction was to the north, away from the tank. So that actually helped us substantially. The next day, Deep set up a tank truck over our tank to draft water from 2 hydrants that are directly connected to the tank. Didn't use too much water as far as I could tell. I don't have any information on that. That's part of the things I have to still collect, is how much water was consumed. They tended to do is water the backyards, a lot of the homeowners, just to keep it damp. because there was no rain, obviously, for the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks prior to that. So all that tinder was very dry so that they would wet it down. So if the fire wind direction had changed, it would have stopped at that point. So anyway, that was the critical nature of this whole situation, is because if that tank had depleted at a certain level, we could have put on our connection to MDC, but of course it's at the northern end of our system, and this is at the southerly end of the system. There would have been some hydraulic problems to that, I'm positive. So that was one of the concerns we had. So the other issue is...
We got a Meriden connection there, don't we?
No, we don't.
I
Well,
thought we had that in the works.
well, it was and it wasn't. I'll explain that while you were talking about the same thing. The Meriden connection, I had an agreement with the Meriden superintendent who left back in July, retired, and so far they haven't replaced them. So I haven't been able to get anybody to commit. And I've asked them, and I asked Regional Water Authority, because Regional has an agreement with them as well, to give me a copy of their agreements, because I want to have a similar agreement with them so we can connect to Meriden and actually do construction work next year so we could physically make the connection. Haley Ward's already done the design. They still need some permits to be made. And also, of course, it would be a diversion permit from DEP, but a lot of that hinges on Meriden. If Meriden chooses not to interconnect with them, I got a project that I can't move forward with.
Well,
So at least I will for the design.
It highlights the problem. If we did have another
Yeah,
multiple
it would
fire,
have been.
we need that
No,
water.
actually, correct. All I would have done is open up the valve for Meriden. It's a 12-inch line. We would have a dedicated 12-inch line from around Whitney Lane to all the way, not Whitney Lane, Worthington Point Lane, all the way up to the Lake. I forgot the Island Way property over there on North Colony Road. There's a section in it. Technically, I didn't realize this based on the mapping. That's still a good portion of Berlin right there. Meriden line is a little further down. Meriden's actually serving that little section in Berlin. So those are all interconnected. The fire actually brought out that additional point, as Liam just mentioned. Yeah. So that was an interesting point. That would have been helpful if we had had the connection at the time.
Where does Meriden get their water from?
Meriden gets it from multiple sources. They have a Evans well field. They have a Blacks well field, Lincoln well field at Platt. And then they also have a Columbus Park, which is a contaminated well over by the, what do you call it, the mall. And they have Elmere, Merrimere Reservoir, Beaverbrook, and a couple of others. And so they have
You even got it at Freedom Park.
Mixed, but you know what? When I was talking to the former director, he basically indicated to me that this would have been a good two-way street connection because they needed some water because they're in the sensitive area. They're in the Quinnipiac Valley, and then being in the Quinnipiac Valley, DEEP has limited their ability to take water from that particular area because of that. The same thing is true with Southington. Southington has their well fields there. Is basically limited to what they can take from that area because it depletes the groundwater and then there's no flow into the Quinnipiac at all. So anyway, that was one of the reasons as I wanted to kind of memorialize this whole process and let you know that this has consequences. Our storage tank, basically dropping it down, creates a problem in the Silver Ridge area in which the booster pumps, and we actually had to pay for the booster pumps to be put back on service several times because when we were painting the tank, there was no physical way they could paint the exterior of the tank without dropping it down to such a low level, even with huge dehumidifiers. They had the whole tank surrounded and everything. They couldn't do it, and we had to drop it down to a significant level, and that created a problem. So now when the tank is going to have to be taken out of service, I definitely know we're going to have a problem, so we do need to have another source of supply in that area, and that would be the Meriden connection. And right now the hydraulics is satisfactory for us. They would actually have to pump from our system into their system if they wanted to purchase water from us, which they had indicated that they would be interested in
So
doing.
they're going to put a pump system here.
They would put in the pump system through that line that we would be paying for though. So I just wanted to go through that. I don't see, one of the other things that came up is the FEMA reimbursement. FEMA, and I know this is, I think there's still FEMA reimbursements from several years ago from the storm of damage, wind damage that occurred years ago. So I guess this isn't going to be a quick process here. However, I was looking at some portion of it to be reimbursable. We put on the wells for 3 days, an additional 4 hours each. So, and I know what the pumping rates are, so I could go back and recalculate that. I think it's something in the vicinity of $3,000. Overtime was very minimal. I don't even put in my time. I basically put in Mike Brzezowski's time, who was out there several times during the fire. And then what I don't know, and I'm not sure how to collect this information, so it's still one of the things I would have to gather, is how much hydrant usage was done during that period of time to wet the backyards of many of the homeowners in that location. And that's the only section I really know of where our hydrants are used. On the opposite side of the mountain, over by Quincy Trail, we have a small booster tank there. I'm almost positive they didn't use any water in that area because that would have been hydraulically not acceptable because the elevations there are pretty high. So.
They came up with a cost for that whole thing for limitations.
Yeah, $1 million. I saw that. Yeah,
$1 million.
yeah. But that was because Sebi, I think they actually had overkill because they had so many people that were falling over each other.
They had people flying out for vacations. Come on.
Yeah, well,
this is a brush fire.
They had, yeah.
This
well,
is a joke.
one of the, and I won't get to who said this, but one of the firemen said that if we had all worked on putting out the fire, it would have been out a lot sooner than it was. But everybody was hanging around and getting food, getting feed, and and they're coming in day to day. And then, of course, what they did end up doing is they moved the command center from over by Hawthorne Inn down into the DOT facility over on the Berlin Turnpike. Actually, just north of the DOT facility.
Yeah,
But-
they took over Al's office.
Yeah, and basically what they did is they ran a lot of brush fires out of that particular office too. So I think that got kind of multiply involved with everything.
As long as there was no Trump signs, then
Yeah.
FEMA would.
And I don't know and then the governor's declarance of an emergency condition. I don't know if it was statewide. If it was statewide, then all of these other brush fires too potentially would have some kind of.
They had to get permission from the governor to use the water out of Silver Lake.
Well, that's okay because actually I'm glad they
Really?
did because sure, with Silver
I mean,
Lake.
come on, why couldn't they, in an emergency, anytime that there's a fire like that, it's usually a standard that they can get water wherever they want because it's.
They can, but it's more an effective situation. Back in when I was still at the state health department, we made a big issue. We had a fire over by not far from Shuttle Meadow, and we were upset with the federal government because they were sending helicopters over Shuttle Meadow, right? What the intake was. They didn't know anything. They were taking water at the intake. So one of those helicopters fell into the system that would have contaminated the whole reservoir.
Nobody said they had to be stupid about it, but it's one thing to, fly properly and know
Well,
what
I
you're doing.
realize
mean,
that, but actually getting water from the lake was actually one of the best
Well,
alternatives.
My point is that it took, DEP said no.
Well, I don't know all those details. You know that, so.
Well, that's the fire marshal was telling me.
Oh, okay.
He says they stopped them and they had to go to the governor to get
Permission.
permission to
Oh.
get the water.
Yeah, I don't know why
Yeah,
that to me.
helicopters flew over my neighborhood continuously.
Talk about this, why we're mine every day. Going right to the hospital,
Officially
low
out?
profile.
As far as I know, I don't know if it's
Oh,
been declared officially out. It's like Sebi pointed out, it's $1 million. That was
That's
the
okay,
cost.
it's gonna rain. That's
Yeah.
all right.
Well, no, Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday. Right, so,
Unplannable.
It effectively is out, as I pretty much say. But that first evening with the glow there, it looked a little bit like California.
No,
One of
it
my
had to
Not
be
even
flames,
close.
that was a brush.
Not even close?
Not even close. You'd have to see.
You mean to tell me this,
Skyline.
this was
That
not?
ain't skyline, there's no skyline.
Oh, okay.
You're talking 1 million acres versus.
Yeah, I know.
One of my
Plotted
neighbors
them.
wanted to call in the fire,
Hey,
but she was.
we're
she spoke
smaller here.
Polish. She didn't know if they could understand.
Skyline.
So I had to call it.
Okay, let me go to the next item now, unless there's any more questions with this. So we'll still be looking to see if we can get any kind of additional FEMA repayments. Baxter Avenue meter, this has caused me a great deal of headache. Just recently, we went to download some additional information and found out that there wasn't recording from September to October for some reason. Of course, it was a dry period, so maybe it wasn't this big a deal. We think the data is there. However, we have called it map engineering to go back in there and take a look at it. I'm not sure if the battery died or if something else was not triggered. And I want to make it clear. I mean, people are trying to sell me information about getting material or information from the cloud. I'm really not interested in the cloud. What I'm interested is very simplistically, give me the flow on the date of January 1st and the flow at December 31st, so I know what the total flow is. And that's very simplistic. That's all I want. If I were doing some speculation, if I were doing some design work, sure, I probably would want to know ins and outs and ups and downs of the whole story, but not at this point in time. We're very simplistic. And here's the point, because we think, and I'm not quite clear, originally I thought that what I could do is take the Baxter Avenue meter readings and also the reading from Willow Park, which are the two locations that Kensington uses for determination of their contribution to the Mattabesset. Well, it turns out if I do that, then the remaining portion turns out to be a huge number, which doesn't make any sense to me at all. Since we have a tighter system, our system is almost 90% PVC. And I was showing Warren a little bit earlier, Worthington and Kensington are made up with vitrified clay, 3/4 foot sections. They have sections that have had problems. They have sections that have collapsed. And we know that their I&I is significant. Well, when I took Kensington out of the picture, didn't dawn on me until that is that, well, we don't have an indication of what Worthington is. It could be as substantial as Kensington's. It's as old a system, if not older in some places, and it's in poor condition. And they haven't made any attempt, to my knowledge, to really look at what their flows are. We know that there's significant flows coming out of Middletown Road. We also know that there's significant flows coming out of Webster Heights. But I couldn't give you more detail. I think, Warren, in your report 2012, pointed out, I think you said something to the vicinity that we were losing about $35,000 a year for waste because of the leakage then. And that was like 12 years ago. And I'm sure
Who was losing that?
we were losing it as a whole because we were
As a
paying
whole,
extra.
three districts.
Yeah, because we can never, and this is the problem. Our systems are so intertwined, it's difficult to really separate them. And so here's my scenario. And I've talked to Mike about this, Mike Ahern, and I'm running this by you gentlemen as well to see what you think about it. The Baxter Avenue meter is a reading. It's a good reading because we've had it reevaluated, calibrated, and the whole 9 yards. So the point of it is that I'll give you an example. 2023, they being Kensington sold 190 million gallons. Actually, 190 million gallons supposedly went in. That's water sold. That's what they have sold to their customers. So if you use that figure, that brings them down to something in the $1 million range. However, the Baxter Avenue meter, based on what I saw in July, was already up to 433 million, which means that's what's going into the system, not the 190, which they had purchased, because even that wasn't all going in. But the 433 definitely is going into the system.
They did 309.
I'm
They
talking
sold 190.
No, you're missing up the point. The Baxter Avenue reader totalizer was 433
I
million.
understand. Yeah.
Okay, so 190 basically would, in my mind, should be replaced by the 430, which is more realistic because it's going into the system. And that's the important part. So what that does is changes the entire ratio there. So what they end up doing is they end up paying almost a couple $100,000 more. We get a little less, and also Worthington gets a little less, which I don't think is earned, but anyway, it is what it is, because we just don't have the mechanism to separate their flows.
Well, it doesn't matter because it only matters what goes in that pipe to the Mattabesset. And it's coming directly from them.
And then here's the other
So-
scenario, is that it makes more sense because here's the other point, which I haven't been able to answer because this is the mistake. If, for instance, you're getting a 4 million gallon flow out of Baxter Avenue, okay, but yet you're seeing a 13 million gallon flow going out of the Berlin Turnpike. There's got to be something that's making it up. And it can't be all of our system, and it has to be Worthington's. So I suspect that that's part of the problems. We just don't have, that's a big unknown from our perspective.
Well, wait till we have a couple of good rain events and then we're gonna see that spike.
Well, we'll see the spike, but what I'm saying is we'll never really have a good handle on Worthington's unless we have meters all over the place. And that's part of the problem. You'd have to have several meters. And
Well,
I
you
think,
could do a study. That's
yeah, and I think you brought out the fact that, Warren, in 2012, specifically, there were a lot of leakages and laterals too. Even when we did the Belcher Brook, in that particular, not 2012, but 2014 or 15, when we did Belcher Brook, basically you found areas that were still high flows. They never replaced it, never repaired it. But we relined the Belcher Brook, but all it did is make it easier to collect in Belcher Brook. And so Belcher Brook wasn't leaking, but it turns out that all these other laterals were leaking. So I think it's an extremely complicated case, but what I'm thinking of doing, as I said, is to replace and make the pitch and then present it to the town council and say, we're gonna do it this way. And this is the way we're going to approach the process. And I'm sure we're going to get blowback. If we get blowback, I think I'm going to be able to at least defend it. And that's why I'm presenting
Well,
it to you,
there's
gentlemen.
other pieces from the Mattabasset that needs to be applied here that's a complication.
Well, the
That might be
Mattabasset,
an executive session.
what the Mattabasset does, and you know better than anyone, is that the cost. The cost element becomes extremely high because we're paying for the I&I, regardless of where it's coming from. When it goes to the Mattabasset, he doesn't care. Art Simonian sees a number and says, that's what Berlin owes me. And that's the problem. How do we divvy it up so that it's the fairest it can be?
Well, that's the point that's going on that you're talking about.
I also have a moving target. I have maybe at least 5 or 6 developments ongoing right now with the potential of another 500 other customers coming on board. I just got a check from Berlin Estates, 57 units for the townhouses back there. So Rushmore sent me that, so that those are going forward. The Dadio's got over 200. There's a hotel there that's going with 100 units. Orsini there on Acura, it's got 76 units. Pat Snow's got another 32 units, another 22 units. And these are all adding up. And then now, just recently, Kensington, Christophic Farm is on the market. That's going to be interesting. There's another section over here that's open that they had potentially put on but never developed it. That was about another 86 units. So I'm looking at all these units coming to fruition. And as they do, our demands are going to go up. Our cost is going to go up regardless. So we know that.
How many meters are we talking about in order to effectively meter?
Good question, Nick. I don't really know. I would think this is the problem. We're not quite sure. And to be honest with you, nobody's ever done a study to figure that out. One of the problems is that when Art was here, Art didn't realize it, and they were divvying up the cost for the Berlin Turnpike for all 3 systems. So they had to do it for DEP. I thought I understood is to rationalize what the percentage of each utility's responsibility to the cost for the DEP loan would be. So basically what they did is they apportioned it there because we know the Berlin Turnpike. So 1,000 of 1,100 of 1,200 customers from Worthington goes through that meter station, that pumping station. The other 100 goes through the Middletown Road pump station. But then there are other sites that come in, for instance, the Belcher Brook, and then further down Lower Lane, go into Belcher Brook again. Those are unmetered. We have no idea what that is. And so that's the part that's odd. And we also have a section here from Kensington that goes down into the Belcher Brook. That's unmetered as well. So, I mean, we'd probably be looking at maybe a dozen meter sites. So, I mean.
Even to continuously monitor 12 sites on an annual basis in order to justify the additional expense and therefore effectively bill them, it might be worth the money. I mean, I have numbers on what we spend every year in our metering campaign across the city. And so I could pull that and let you know.
Well, metering also probably requires some kind of cooperation. I don't know that we would get the cooperation.
Can we just put a meter in downstream and say it's in our system.
I like your thinking, but I don't know if it would work.
There's some other complications that's going on here that it's just not gonna be worth it.
Well, I think, I like your suggestion. I thought your thought. There was a proposal way back when for DPC Engineering did one to monitor the entire town. Well, obviously that didn't go very far at all. Once it was presented to the other two divisions, they basically just poo-pooed it, let it go. So it never materialized, and it was fairly expensive to do. And that would have been pointed out where meters should have been located. So that would have been one of the situations that would have adopted. Your point's well taken. I just don't have a good answer for it because relatively speaking, it would make sense. But however, if there's ever a consolidation, then it wouldn't be necessary anyway. So, but anyway, that's where we are with it. So I wanted to kind of raise it to you that what I'm doing is when I get it finalized, then basically I could circulate it, and then basically what we do is just have to present it to the town council because it's going to be a deviation from the past practice in terms of how we basically build them. And as I said, I'm almost sure.
We're not billing them.
Well, build them in the future, so.
Well, then we're setting a precedent.
We're billing them every year, but we're
Well,
billing
no, we're
them in a
not getting
different
our
form.
I&I. We're paying.
Well, I understand that, but we are billing them. We're just not billing them to the most efficient route. Okay.
You think that dry weather is contributing?
Well, that's going to be interesting to see what the dry weather patterns are
Once we
because
get some rain.
yeah, because for instance,
I thought that Baxter was pretty accurate.
well, some of this stuff was interesting too because I was talking to Mike Perzanowski, and again, Warren is a little bit familiar with this because they used the data from the CDM report back in 1996, 1998, and that pointed out a problem over down by your area. And then Mike Perzanowski says, based on the flow rates into the pump station there, that there's no problem. There's no leakage issues. But we do need to take a look at a couple of sites. So I have the drain doctor set up as soon as it starts raining again to go back in there and do some camera work where we think we may have some problems. But it's not as many as I thought. So there's only a couple of little locations that we need to double check if we're contributing to the I&I. I'm positive we're contributing some. I don't know how much. That's the only problem. So, okay. Anything else on this one? Okay. Lead copper. As you know, that the lead copper rule, and we made it October 8th. We submitted our report to the State Health Department, and we were then obligated from a month from that point to send out letters to those individual homeowners who were marked unknowns. Actually, I told Lisa the other day, actually, she and I have saved a lot of money here because I can't tell you how many consultants that came after me wanted to charge us $50,000, $60,000 for doing the study here. And basically, we were able to cobble it together, and she was extremely helpful. Basically, what we found is that we had 458 unknowns of the 2,900 customers that we had.
I got mine.
Jim got it.
Oh, okay, Jim. Yeah, so basically 458. Out of that list, we didn't realize that there were some that obviously had just sewers, and like yourself, Bruce, just wells. So those could be eliminated. We'll eliminate them the next go around. We're getting some interesting feedback. What I asked for is the meter to be pictured with the service line to get a picture of, well, what kind of piping. So lead pipe is obviously taboo. The state had 3 mandated letters: a lead letter, galvanized letter, and a unknown. So we obviously used the unknowns because now what we were able to show that from everything that we had connected in 1967 on, those are all copper because that was required. That was the only way we were allowed to put in. Homes prior to that, we didn't have any knowledge to. Although we found some additional cards that show us that they were connected maybe to the 90s or 80s and so forth, so that we could subtract those now from the system as well, so that we know. But so I think our numbers are going to get down to completion. But people, as it is, I sent them a transmittal letter. I sent them the mandated letter from the health department warning them of what to do if they do find a problem. And then the third thing I sent them was a scenario as to look at the service line see what kind of service lines. Yet, a couple times this was what I got back from one of the homeowners. That's their water meter.
Oh,
It's actually a gas
Yeah, that's
line.
what it looks
I mean,
like.
really. But she was convinced she had the right thing. And the other one sent me this. And this is the electrical meter. He told me to contact the woman in the house if you had any questions about the water meter. So this is it. And then we had another one who sent me a copy of the propane gas valve connector. So you know what we're getting. Some of these people do not read the material, do not certainly understand the material, and then don't have any idea why we were doing it. I mean, if they're sending me things that don't make any sense, absolutely. And then some of the pictures we were talking about with Lisa this morning, what happens is that we're looking at these, they're in terrible locations. I mean, some of the jimmying of the water meters put in with the locations in the basements are horrible. I mean, they look like they were put in by some rector set, because it's one of them, I don't know really what to do with them, because the thing is, he had so many dissimilar metals. Dissimilar metals sends up some kind of electrolysis, and you're actually correct. And you could see it in the copper piping. You could see the corrosion on the copper piping. I mean, yes, copper piping, I don't know, where my responsibilities lie, but personally, some of these plumbing jobs are horrific.
Well, even if you put brass against copper,
There's brass, there's copper, there's lead, there's steel, there's, you name it, it's in there.
If these people don't know where their water meter is, how do you get the readings?
Well, we have RF devices off the water
On
meter.
all of them?
Yes. I hope. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if we don't, they don't.
I hope
have
it's
an
not
RF
connected to
meter.
this.
we're not getting anything from them, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but that's a good question, Warren, because that's what bothered me most, is we didn't have any records of when the actual meters went in, because historically, as most of us know, the meter reading process was done by humans. Basically, you'd have to go into the house, including the electric meter.
People are reading.
And Nick, you could probably never remember this, but the thing is, each guy would go in there and mark the meter reading. That's how they were billed on a semi-annual basis, because it took so long for the meters to be beat. And some of them actually on an annual basis. To be honest with you, I think it was New Britain that had it on an annual basis. So you get one bill per year. That was it. So one reading. And
1 month of one. You're billing today.
Yeah, so I don't know what
Yeah,
month
when
they
you gonna come in
selected.
and get my reading?
Really, but interestingly, so now we have, and now we have at least a body of numbers of homeowners that we can count on and look at, and I think we can deplete that to something quite a bit less. And what I plan to do is send out a letter every couple months, just say, well, can you please do it if you haven't done it, and just give us a picture. But it only has to be now one, because in my first letter I had like 3 or 4 pieces of paper, and that's a lot. I could suspect a lot of people just looked at it and said, oh, I don't want to read any of this material. It's just way too much. It's way too complicated.
Are you including your own photo of, hey, this is what the meter should kind of look like?
I included a meter, not a meter, a little visible icon from the EPA booklet showing, what you should be looking for as the service line and where the meter is, but not the actual physical meter.
You want a copy of mine?
We could do that in the past. That would be okay.
Shows what the lead is.
Most people, I think, are pretty good. I've actually had a couple customers come in too, because they didn't like sending emails and texts and so forth and attachments or whatever. They came in and just physically told me that they had copper, and they showed me a picture of their connection and said, yeah, fine, that's good. So a lot of them are pretty good. So we'll see what we finally end up with, and what we'll continue to. And the reason I'm doing this is a follow-up for a couple of reasons. Well, from state health compliance, but the other issue is we're obligated to continue to send them letters every year from now on. So I would like to have that number way down lower. And then the other issue is this. There are areas, and I know in the distribution system, and East Berlin happens to be the one, actually,
And it looks well.
all our galvanized piping locations were in East Berlin, by the way. It's interesting. And you could almost tell, because there was a certain handle that was put on there. As soon as you saw the handle, you knew that there was galvanized piping. So those locations are going to be very problematic in the future. We're going to have to look for relining the pipes there, also disconnecting them and reconnecting them with different service connections. So I think it's going to be a major project. That's after my Meriden tank project. But anyway, so that's that. If there's any questions, let me know.
Along with the sewer.
Oh yeah, sure. That's well.
The
Yeah.
pipes need to be
Right,
replaced.
that's another story. Okay, Meriden, I started telling you a little bit on that, but when we were talking about the Hawthorne, the problem is, I reached out to regional also, and I said, well, geez, if they can't find the agreement that they had, can you find it? Well, neither one can find the agreement, so I don't know. What kind
Does
of
that make it an agreement?
I don't understand. Well, I suppose they're agreeable because like neither one can find it, so
Well, they
that's
can't
the other
agree
point.
to disagree, so.
Yeah, so it works out. So we're still actively looking at that. Haley Ward is trying to reach out. They've got the design pretty much set. As I said, that they still need the permits. So our next step is just to see if we can try to get somebody in Meriden.
So we're just lacking the authority to sign off on what
I
we've
will not
designed.
proceed with any construction work until I have an agreement with Meriden,
Well, okay.
period.
Well, yeah, so we're looking for
Yeah.
the authority on
Yeah,
their
and
side.
some kind of a commitment from deep that the agreement is okay and reasonable and
Signed off on
doable.
So we
even-
got to get the authority
even
from
if the-
Meriden and also Deep to
Yeah,
okay the
even
whole
if
situation.
even if the diversion permit isn't completely granted, if it's satisfactory, they could look at it as an interim connection. I'm not so worried about the sale of water down the road. I'm more interested in the correction of the tank.
Signed off.
And we will probably be doing another tank inspection anyway, so that's before then for sure. Deming Road Pump Station. Okay, this is one of our great things. Basically, this year, for some reason, MDC was about 6 weeks late for payment, which was a little bit of a shocker to me, since we had talked about it. You don't think of a large company being that delinquent in payment, but anyway, they were. They finally came through. The Deming Road Pump Station is about 99% complete. There's only a couple of little aesthetic issues that need to be finished there. The door is finally put in. When we went out there, we finally realized, because we have a structure above grade, we looked around the trees and said, oh my God, we got to clear some trees. So we actually had a crane come in and to cut a number of trees because we were afraid that they were going to fall on the structure. Before there was no structure, so there was no worry. But now that we have a structure, it is. So it's something we may want to do later in the year, not this year, obviously, sometime next year, is to go out there and take a quick look at it. It's a very nice site. They did an excellent job. Nickerson, can't say enough about the company. They did a wonderful job with the construction. And the cost, I don't believe there's a cost overrun. We just had one change order, and it was a minor one for $5,000, and it was nothing. Now, I am doing one other thing, and just so you know, is I'm going to the town council next week to ask for an approval for $38,000 to pay for an additional pump to keep it on the shelf. The original design was 3-pump system. This is a 2-pump system. It works very well. But I originally there was supposed to be an extra pump purchased. For some reason, it got dropped out. I would prefer to have a pump, an extra pump sitting on the shelf, or even rotationally putting it in. I don't know if you have any rotational pumps that you use.
All of our pump stations are typically designed as like duty standby, so the duty pumps go down, you always have it standby to go to.
Okay.
We don't typically
It's already plumbed in, just switch it
Yeah.
on.
So because of the delay in time for getting a pump, and also if you get something a couple of years out, you're probably not getting the same thing. So what happens is that the waiting time is like 6 to 8 weeks. So we're going to be purchasing a pump from Carlson Pump.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Why is it would be the responsibility of the town of Berlin to pay for that pump as compared to the Berlin Water paying for that pump?
Town of Berlin isn't paying for it. Berlin Water is paying for it.
Oh, Berlin Water.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
But
yeah.
you
That's
have
right.
to go to the
I miss-
council?
yes, yes. Yeah.
Oh.
In theory, and you hit on an interesting point, because in the past practice, the attorneys also agreed that we don't technically have to go to town council for approval, but it's a courtesy, and they give us the approval to go forward with it.
That sounds like the golf commission giving all the money to the council, and then have to go back to the council and say, hey, we need money for sand traps. Duh.
That might be a similar
So why
scenario.
don't
I
you
don't know.
guys set up a slush fund, it's just to where you can have for maintenance to keep it up, instead of going back all the time and manage your own money.
We do have a slush fund.
Well, I didn't say your
We'll get
personal
into that,
one.
but,
Yeah, well, not as for being
Yeah, right.
Okay, so Deming Road, that's all set. Now, I do have another item. This gentleman over here on 11 Loring Lane, it was kind of an oddball situation. I'm just bringing it up because I wanted your approval as well. His liner went on his pool. He didn't realize it, lost all the water, and then he was asking only for that portion of the pool water that was lost is not being paid for by the sewer fee. And he didn't even worry about refilling the pool. That wasn't an issue at all. It's just the liner loss. So I went back and looked at the records, what we typically have done, going back and made some calculations, and I came up with a credit of about $179.30 based on that. So that would be subtracting out the sewer fee from the liner loss that was lost for the water that was lost during the liner repair. And I'd like your approval on that.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
How is that our problem? I'm just curious. You have a pool, and you lose the water.
Well,
and
he
you end
is
up-
paying
I mean, the
Oh.
amount of money is kind of that's what I'm not saying, but where do people then become responsible?
Well, let me answer the question. This gentleman basically lost water in the system, so it didn't go down the sewer.
Sewer system.
It went down into the ground.
All right.
So
Okay,
basically, what
so
we're simply
he
just-
was paying for the water fee and the sewer fee for the water that went into the ground.
I understand.
So this is why we give kind of a little bit of an exception on this, okay?
That's like watering my lawn and.
Exactly.
irrigation.
That's why you get the irrigation meter, which you don't have, by the way, but
No.
I
So
just
he's-
want to
he's
rub
not
it in
getting-
when I
he's not
can.
getting a credit for the water.
This is one big cheap shot.
He's getting a credit for the sewer that didn't
yeah,
get used.
that makes sense.
I understand. So-
Okay, so
That's all.
I think it's pretty nominal, and that he was pretty good. I mean, he says, if you can get it for me, fine. If you can't, I think it's not like he was pretty pushy.
Well, it's
Like the next case like that.
$175. Like, do we need to make a motion to that?
Yes, I'd like to have a motion.
I
for
make a
approval.
motion to bypass
Second.
due to the fact that it didn't.
Well,
go
no,
into the sewers.
just approve it. You don't have to bypass anything.
Each second.
Second.
Second, Jake?
No, Sebi.
Every second.
Debbie is an alternate.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we can speak, but you can't
Technically,
I'm
vote.
not trying to
Vote.
catch it. Oh,
If all the people are seated, they are tonight.
Yeah, he's
got it.
right.
You're
So
right.
to have
Sorry
Dave.
about that.
Then Dave can do
I
it.
forgot I got two more motions.
Yeah.
What
No,
about
no, not that point.
Well,
And
we're
this-
waiting to
this-
find
you're-
out if you figured it out.
You're the second.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All sure your mind's nay. Okay.
okay, this one was a little bit, I don't know how to put it, but being nice about this one. This was a pool filling one. This gentleman contends that one of our staff told him that he needed to take pictures of his meter.
What's the address, please?
95 Mallard Lane. It's item 4.8.
4.8.
And I looked at his bill, extraordinary amount of water he used, 87,000 cubic feet, which turns out to be about 65,000 gallons in that quarter, so it's a huge mud. And he
That's a
contends,
large amount.
about 30,000 gallons of that went into his pool. So he took pictures of it. We don't normally do this, and I don't particularly care for it.
How did he
because-
wind up with, what is it, the beginning of the year and the end of the year?
I don't know. So here's the problem I see with this. I'll be very honest with you. There's no controls. I don't know when this picture was taken. I don't know how it was taken. I don't know the circumstances, whether he did it at the beginning of the quarter, the end of the quarter, whatever. And we could give him a nominal, a small amount, and then give him that towards, I know his bill is big. It was over, over $1,000.
So how did it
obviously-
compare from previous years?
Well, it wasn't used this previous year, so it wasn't a problem because he filled this whole pool. That was the 35,000 gallon.
Oh, this is a new pool?
Yeah, yeah. So there wasn't any history on
Is
that
it
part.
in-ground pool?
I don't know. It
What
doesn't make
makes a
any
difference for the size if it's in-ground compared to above ground?
Well, I don't know how you can
Mallard
distinguish it.
Lane,
It's just the amount of water that went in that.
I'd have an educated guess that's an in-ground
That's
pool,
what I'm thinking too.
and knowing the
I
neighborhood.
don't know that the new people know your formula, your past.
Why don't we inform them what the
Practices.
formula is and find an idea of how much water it took to
First
fill
of
it?
all, I spoke to the gentleman. He sent me about 12 emails. And he says he was convinced that one of our staff had indicated to him to take the meters. I talked to everybody, and no one had indicated that they wouldn't, because this isn't policy, this isn't procedure. Our staff's been our youngest staff's been online for at least 4 years.
Ray, what's the argument? What does he want?
He contends he takes the pictures of the 2 meters and wants us to give him a break on the amount that the 2 meters have posted.
Oh, I would say no. No break.
Okay.
I had to fill my pool. I didn't get any break from Kensington Fire District.
Well, you wouldn't expect one, would you?
No, exactly.
If you'd come to us, we would have helped you.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have given you an irrigation meter for $100 and you would have been far
We
better off.
don't have that option. We don't have that option here.
Oh, you do actually.
When did that
But the
start?
cost is, I think it's quite a bit more though.
Oh,
Isn't
it's
that true,
$400
Dave?
or something. Quite a bit more.
Okay.
If it's a
Well,
new
listen,
pool-
we're getting away from the topic.
Yeah, yeah.
But Al, I like your point because that's
I
the
said
same
no.
way I felt initially.
If it's a new pool, you should have a design drawing that would have you could figure out the exact volume of the pool. So have them present the volume of the pool and then we can discount the sewer usage.
Well, even if he says 30,000, the idea is
Well,
to,
we would need to have the drawing.
He would have also had the option to have trucks fill the water. So he chose not
oh
to.
yeah, definitely. And then I'm glad you raised that point because here's the other point. I looked this up too because this came up quite a few times in the summer. I talked to a lot of people too about it, of filling the pools this summer. And I told them that, a truckload of 5,000 gallons of water goes for either $450 to $650 a clip. So that's for one filling. If you were to fill it with our pool water, even with a fee for the sewer fee on there, you'd be paying about $100 to $200 typically for a pool of 10, 15,000 gallons, which, that's more residential size. So in this case, it'd go closer to $400. So what?
So all the more,
$400.
right, all the more reason, right? He got a deal by filling using our water versus getting
Yeah.
trucks, right?
Well, you raised the point.
It costs him about
And you
$3,000,
will take it.
$4,000.
Yeah, and now I'd like to hear what the other gentlemen think too as well. So we'll see where it goes because I'm not asking you to approve it. I'm asking you to evaluate it, which is a little bit different than the last one.
I believe that I believe it's, what do you call it? It's a deal if it's coming directly from us and it's not gonna be discounted. Because we've got a town full of people that fill it through.
Well, if I hear you correctly and let me interpret it, you're basically agreeing with Al.
Yes, I'm agreeing
Okay,
with Al.
let's keep it that way.
I think that there's a lot more pressing things that people really have a legitimate reason for to get a discount. And I think we should keep it to that, to people that.
So you're agreeing with Al also?
I am.
Yeah, I agree. Right. Yeah, he's right. If they accidentally had a leak and they didn't notice and we had some history and we track it, we've done it in the past, then we give them that break. But you're filling a pool. I mean,
There's options.
situation.
Yeah, there are options. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the part that bothers me most is that saying that our staff was involved kind of implicates that one of them or several of them didn't know what they were talking about because we don't do this as a norm.
They assumed that it was.
We've never
staff.
done this
Doesn't
way.
mean necessarily it could have
Well,
been.
I couldn't verify it. That's the thing, and I shouldn't verify it because I'm almost sure that neither one of them would have said something like this before.
It's not something our staff would have done.
That's the point I'm making on this.
Any more input on that, their subject matter?
And we'll take a vote unless there's more discussion.
Dave, you don't have nothing to say?
Is someone making motion?
I'll make a motion to have the criteria set that if it was one thing, it was a emergency or.
Well, let's keep it to this rather than opening it up to other issues.
I-
Either approve it or deny it. I think it's
make a
gotta
motion
be,
to deny.
yeah, I think it's gotta be simplistic.
Say the words, please.
Oh, whether to deny payment or to approve payment. It's any kind of a
For
credit.
Filling a pool
Yeah.
with Berlin water.
Well, no, through this metering process, yeah. He took pictures of the meters, both before and after, supposedly when he filled the pool.
Okay,
That isn't,
Deny
that isn't,
payment due to the
that
fact
isn't our
that there
typical
was.
condition. He could have bought an irrigation meter, put it in, and then ran the water through the irrigation meter,
Yeah, I
and he would
think, I
have been
think
charged without a,
Lisa wants to
sewer
know
fee.
how to write this.
The question is whether to approve the use of meter pictures for pool filling. And to get reimbursement for, towards
Using
the
use
water
of the
usage
meter
and not the
pictures.
sewer usage for that way.
I make a motion that we deny it.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Liam started it.
But Dave can finish it.
Yeah, well, either one. It doesn't-
And William can be the first and Dave can be the second. Deny it.
Liam's the motion, Dave's going to be the second
Right,
to deny.
deny. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary minds?
Can we wait to hear from Al?
Al,
Aye, I'm on the aye.
aye for denial, correct?
Correct. Correct.
All right.
Just to be clear.
You started.
Warren, did you also, okay?
Aye, well, I didn't know if it's.
All right.
The voting members are Nick, Dave,
Well,
myself.
here's the other point I
and
think I
these are
have
two
to need to make.
alternates.
There's an option here. Had the gentleman reached out to me, or I've reached out to somebody from the department, would have been told you can get an irrigation meter. It's fairly inexpensive, $100. Plumbing is very inexpensive now. Most of the plumbers in town are familiar with it. He could have done it quickly, cheaply, and it would have had it.
Well, this isn't the first time. He's gonna be coming back because he's gonna be filling this pool up.
Well, I don't know if he fills it up every year, but regardless of that, the point of it is he has an option. If he didn't have that option, I don't know if we would want to look at this, but this opens up a can of worms for us, because if we start getting everybody start taking pictures of it, there's no control over that. I don't know the dates and the times and how to deal with that.
If he
And
sent,
already, we're gonna get pictures like this and tell me I want a credit.
if he sent you 15 or 20 emails, he's gonna send, if your answer to him right now is gonna have you.
Well, my answer to him
flurry of
is this,
emails.
it's been denied, but
It's been denied and
if
that's the
this is
end
the
of it.
vote, if it's denied, no, he can come
No,
back
he
and
needs to get a.
he can come back and
irrigation meter.
appeal it to you if he wants to do it directly on his own.
Right.
But he should
It's
get
fine.
an irrigation meter, because this is, if he's got a pool, he's gonna be filling this up and it'll be a cost savings to him.
Yes,
And that needs to be presented.
yes.
Now, where's the water going when the pool's empty?
What do
On
you
the
mean,
ground.
where is it going?
When the pool is empty for the season? Or
They only
Oh,
lower?
it's
lower.
not emptied for
Or
the
lower.
season. I don't think it would be emptied for the season.
They just let it go down.
Okay,
They pump it out on the ground.
pump it to the ground.
Sure, why not? Just let it,
Yeah.
it's not
It's
hazardous.
Going down the,
Well, the only problem is that you
No.
can't go into the lake there because you'll have probably a fish kill, because the chlorine residuals are pretty high usually from a pool.
Yeah, it was
This
like
is
Woodley.
near,
Yeah,
near
it's-
the lake.
There's a Sweet Pond will have all kinds of fish floating up.
How far is it from Sweet's Pond?
I don't know. It's fairly close because it's in the watershed there for that.
It's Mallard Lane,
Yeah, you'd have to be very careful about where you discharge it to, that's for sure.
yeah.
It does it, do it late at night.
Have the fish go in the morning.
Yeah.
I would suggest a reminder to staff that any questions regarding credit should come through.
Well, they usually
email
do, you know, Nick,
correspondence.
that's the other part. I know the staff pretty well, and none of them would do
None of them
what
would
he's
say
saying.
something like that.
And he was trying to prove it to me, and I didn't see the proof anywhere, so That's why I was a little bit concerned, so.
And I'm sure you asked him who.
Yeah, he wasn't clear on who.
Red-haired freckled guy.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, so has that been approved? I mean, denied?
That was tonight.
Okay. Okay, this is gonna be
Sure it
more
wasn't
sense.
Joe?
Who?
Joe
Joe what?
Agarula.
What about it?
It was him.
No, this is in our section, not Kensington. The next one is sort of a funny one. I'm really not sure. I'm introducing it. We don't necessarily have to take a decision on it today. I talked about this once before at an earlier meeting, rate increases. I did some calcs basically. Now, so you don't get confused. This has nothing to do with capital improvement planning. Okay, so this is not for improvements in plans. This is for operational purposes, as increases in basically, as you know, salary increases and increases in materials and goods and stuff for the services that we normally provide and do. So back in 2016, DPC did a study. It was a very detailed study. It indicated at that time we needed to upgrade a huge amount because we hadn't done any water increases in 8 or 9 years prior to that. Sewer too. Sewer were being upgraded almost every year because of the Mattabesett building that was taking on ongoing at the time. Since then, we've had a couple of different increases nominally, 6%, 7%, something in that range. At the time, DPC suggested, based on the number of capital improvement plans we were doing and things that we should be doing, relatively 8%. I checked with Connecticut Water Company. I did a couple of others. 4 to 6% is probably a reasonable level to go up every year. It's not a heck, but if you do let it go for several years, then you're actually looking at catch up. And when you do the catch up, then you look at quite a bit higher rates increases. A lot of folks get pretty upset with it, and that's part of the rationale for doing smaller rate increases, every other year or whatever. That's what I was trying to do here. So I know this is a surprise to everybody. I don't necessarily look at it as something we need to make a decision on today. Take a look at it, and we can talk about it the next time around. Our billing cycle this week, I believe, is a billing cycle for one of the quarters. Our next quarter, I believe, billing cycle will be in February. So I'd like to have a decision, something by that time, whether you agree or not. And then if you do agree, what the rate would be. I'm not fixed at, this one happens to be 5%, by the way. That's what I did, is increase it each.
An executive session, we're gonna have to talk about it.
Well, we could do it, and that's okay. And here's the other point I want to raise, is that this is still pretty close to the cost that actually both districts have, believe it or not. And we have more infrastructure than both of them put together plus. So just to give you some idea of where we stand. We do have, and as Warren knows, we included surcharges for the deep loans, and that's where that sewer charge representation is. And we have one loan for the Department of Public Health, that's a $10 surcharge.
The new rate, flat rate quarterly, is not 6.85, right?
Oh, you're right. I got carried away there, sorry. Good catch.
Just for my own information, the rates for water, does that include a certain percentage of that amount of money going into some kind of
Should be more than
contingency
685.
reserve fund or whatever?
Yes.
If all of a sudden you need
Yes.
a half a mile of new pipe?
You're right on target. Yes, we keep at least $1 million in reserve funds, both water and sewer.
Okay.
And it might be, at this point in time, actually, no, I'll probably get into it when we talk a little bit into the executive session, because somebody was contesting whether we were actually going out of business. But anyway, the question comes out, we're in pretty healthy condition. We have about $9 million sitting. And don't forget, we basically upfronted the $3.2 million project for Deming Road. So we paid for that. And basically, in the next 3.5 years, MDC will be paying 70% of that back. So what we end up paying for that station on our own funds will be about $1.5 million. They will end up paying a little over $2 million plus. So that's a pretty good deal as far as I'm concerned. The next facility, Warren probably would agree with this too, is Berlin Pump Station. That's an older station. It really needs some major renovation. It's had problems over the years as well, but Deming was the worst because these guys were going down there and creating a health hazard. They were in a confined space, which has always made me scared because the thing is in confined space, just one of them does the wrong thing and dies. That, you know, those things you can't just repair anymore. So and they were going down almost 3 or 4 times a week. That to me was way out of whack. So now they don't have to do that, and then and the system operates pretty darn well. It works pretty good. And with the contractor that Nickerson did, they did an excellent job everywhere. So pretty thrilled with everything they did.
Ray, did you say this proposed rate is equal to other towns or the other 2 districts? Or what?
It's in the same price range. I didn't want to say it's exactly the same, but it's in the same price range.
Of what, other
Other
towns?
No, the other 2 districts in town, Berlin. I think one of them has 467 and the other one has 447 or something like that. So we're right in the middle almost. The
But
sewer
not
rate.
their mill rates.
Yeah, without a mill rate, correct. That's the other part. So I threw out some dates. The dates are, it could be adjusted, so don't worry about that. I think
If
that,
you're going to have a rate adjustment, you have to have a public hearing.
correct. Yeah,
So you need to anticipate how that's gonna happen. You just.
right. We would have to,
several months.
right, we'd have to do that, but I'm looking at something before February. And then I didn't want more of an action other than to look at it. If you have any questions, fine. And the correction, I have to make one here. And then we can discuss it next time around. And she's correct. We would then have to post it several times in the paper. And then we'd have a public hearing, just like the town council does, half an hour or so prior to the actual, or 15 minutes, whatever, prior to our meeting on a regular scheduled meeting date. So that way we can, we didn't have to come in twice, just that one time. Typically in the public hearings, we've had very few people show up. And last time we only had one,
If at all.
if at all.
We need to get more. This is not gonna be good.
The last item, 410, is sort of an interesting one too. It's something next week I'm going to town council for 2 things to approve. One is the earth contractors as a emergency repair services provider, which is just an extension of what they already are. Their contract ends at the end of December of this year. They will then be extended for 2 years. We put the bid out. They were the only bidders that came in. So we accepted that bid. I didn't want to wait for that. However, there was a concern because Earth told me too. The gentleman that operates Earth or co-operates it with his dad is basically a firefighter. And so he's at a position where he may be called out, and that's a problem. And so we need backup. So what we did is we went out and did another bid. This bid was just sent out recently. And basically asking for backup. And we actually went out to about 5 or 6 companies to reach out specifically to them to let them know that that the bid's going out and that we'd like to have them. So what we would do is develop a secondary list of contractors. You can call it on call, so available either for emergency conditions or where the primary would not be available for even routine jobs if they were caught up with something else. So we need to have that backup. It gets harder. It gets because there's less people in the field. Some of the contractors have difficulty keeping people. and then keeping good people, and that's another problem. And as a result of that, this is our way of trying to have some kind of backup situation so we don't end up with a problem and an emergency that can't be responded to fairly quickly. That always gets me. Now, in an emergency situation, and we've had 3 main breaks from Middletown Road to Berlin Street. This is the same main that was put in service years ago between the 2 districts, Worthington and East Berlin Fire District, because we were created in 1966. This main is a cast iron main. I brought it in one time. I showed you. It's highly tuberculated. It's an 8-inch line, probably with only a 2-inch actual ability to serve. The problem with this is this. It would have to be relined if it were going to be used and useful in the future. There's no question in my mind. It's almost a good mile of relining there. And then other locations in East Berlin have to be relined, and this couple, I think, have to be completely replaced. So our next project, big project, is going to be in East Berlin, which definitely needs it. It's the oldest part of the system, and it requires probably the most serious attention of all. The only reason it functions fairly decently is because it gets water from Beckley Road. It gets water from Commerce Street, which goes underneath Route 9 from Beckley and comes over by Commerce by Stan Kent. And so and then seasonally, we actually purchase water from Cuomo. So we get that, we have that backup if necessary. But they operate at a whole different pressure gradient there because they can't sustain it. If I were out to let them go with the New Britain pressure, I'd be blowing up the system because about 100 psi is max for them. They can't handle more than that. And the New Britain pressure is about 130 to 140, particularly in the summer.
Commerce Park, it's 120 all the time.
It's rather high, but it is what it is. That's where we buy it from. So anyway, I just wanted to inform you about that and to let you know that we've gone on for another bidding. It's one of those deals where, you just can't get people. So we're hoping that this time we can get some backup folks.
I have a question in regards to that. And at least I've been told, I don't know if it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but the Kensington District.
Yes, I already know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
When they have,
I've heard every scenario.
yeah, I bet, but, when they end up having a break, I'm always thinking that there are 3 guys that are always sitting in their office are out fixing it. But they have some kind of a contract with the city of New Britain? Correct. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that something?
I'm going to be looking into that also because that fellow that used to work for me now works in the city of New Britain. Okay. So he's the manager. So.
And, they seem to come out and put a Band-Aid on it very quick.
Yeah, it's a little tougher in Britain, though, from what my understanding is. But I'm going to find out and see if that's something that we could piggyback on if we could, too, as well. Okay. But I have a feeling that the city of New Britain, it pretty much has its own problems with repairs, water and sewer, because they do both. And actually, they have a third item now, too, that they've been strapped with, and that's storm drainage. Storm drainage has become a big issue, everywhere, and that there's a certification program for that too. I really didn't realize that, but anyway, that storm drainage issue is another added item that they have to deal with. So.
New Britain or Kensington?
New Britain.
Shouldn't we be reviewing the scope that's being bid out ahead of it actually getting bid?
The scope's typical. It's the same scope that we've been using for the last, I don't know,
People don't know
20 years.
Yeah, but I've never seen it, and like maybe what used to work 5 years ago doesn't work anymore.
Oh yeah, no, that's a good point because I didn't realize that. So one of the contractors brought up the question of rental equipment, whether rental equipment, and this originally said no, but I'd like to relax it, and that's what I made as a comment is that if somebody can get rental equipment quickly and cheaply and easily, why not? I'm not going to restrict them. I need somebody to do the job. So, how they get the material goods, if it's acceptable, it's fine with me. I can share that with you. You want to take this one, you can take a look at it and then let me know. It's also online though, Nick. It's online.
Yeah, but I didn't even know it was coming out. So I wouldn't even
we didn't call you up because I didn't think you were going to bid.
No, I know, but
You didn't get the bid spec?
Yeah, take a look at it, see if you have, you may have some suggestions. It hasn't been modified for years, as far as I'm known.
Hey Ray, can I make a request for future meetings?
Sure,
If you're planning on handing out stuff visual, it would be nice to have a digital version of that shown at the same time during Zoom, if possible.
yeah, that
Maybe
one was
hard for me to
more,
attend any Tuesday meetings really, unless I do it virtually.
yeah, that was
so
only,
I'm at-
that wasn't a handout, Al, that was only a comment on it, Nick wanted to see it. But
No,
you're
I
right,
understand, but you've had photos in the past and different things, and you know, I'm limited to my
Yeah.
imagination and what I could see in the camera here.
You've got a good
well,
imagination.
the
there,
photos
Al.
we got last minute, so I have to
Okay.
tell you about that.
Thank you.
Increase the handout that you handed him.
Here's
the
the
rate
rate
increase.
increases right here.
Yeah, we can,
We can forward you the
we can
rate
send that along.
increase.
Well,
Take a
we have
picture
to
and send
actually.
it.
Did anybody else want to look at the bid for the emergency contractors?
Yeah, I do.
I mean,
Okay, that's completes 410. Now, I don't know if you want to go in executive session. If you do,
Absolutely.
that's fine.
I make a motion to go into executive session.
And then we can just stop recording,
You have
that's
to
it.
Stop recording, but they don't have to get off.
Yeah, Jim Harble's on there as well as Al, so, yeah, please.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So there's a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Nick, second.
Nobody wants to adjourn.
No,
You want to stay or you want to go home?
Wanna go? Okay, Dave,
Dave,
second, Dave, all in favor, aye.
I would have said it, but I can't say anything.
All in favor, aye, go.
Hey, at least you're here.
Hey guys.
We need another guy at the.
The right thing to do.
You interested?